Hi, my name is Maddie Montgomery, and today I'll be talking about the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings that I attended, how I felt about them, and everything of that sort. So, my table of contents, I'm going to be going over what I expected out of it versus what really happened, the stigma around alcohol abuse disorder and how this affects healing and treatment of it, how to create therapeutic rapport and develop relationships with patients with alcohol abuse disorder, and the effect of spirituality on recovery. So, what I expected going into AA meetings is I thought it was going to be scary and that they weren't really going to be receptive to students being there. Like they were going to think I was judging them or something, but I was just there to learn. Um, I thought it was going to be like a shameful experience with a bright room with tons of you can do it posters and tacky posters like that on the wall. And I figured they were going to do a lot of introductions like in the movies where they're like, "Hi, I'm Maddie, I'm an alcoholic." And then I thought everybody would be judgy in there, and I knew that it would be set up formally, kind of like group therapy based off of what we've learned in class. Um, so what actually happened was they most of them were open. A lot of them were really nice. But some were not happy that we were there just because I think they felt like we were going to judge them. So they didn't really talk to us and they kind of rolled their eyes whenever we spoke and stuff like that. But most of them were very, very kind and they were definitely kind to each other. As soon as we walked in, they were very receptive to us being there. They invited us to lunch, which was very nice. And then after we told them that we were nurses, they seemed even happier that we were there. At least the ones who were already talking to us were. And then there were introductions at the beginning of the meeting, and anytime that they spoke, so anytime somebody would speak, they would say, "Hi, my name is blah blah blah. I'm an alcoholic," and then say what they wanted to say. And it was a dark room. There were no windows, and all of the posters were very wordy. But everybody was happy to be there, which I didn't expect. I expected everybody to kind of drag their feet going into the building, but everybody seemed very excited to be there and like they looked forward to going. And everybody shared openly, which I didn't expect at all. I thought that people would be closed off and just kind of sitting there listening and like doing that head nod that means that you're not actually paying attention. But that was not the case. Everybody was openly sharing and didn't mind. And then everybody was celebratory of each other's success, no matter how little. Some people were just there for the first day, and people were so excited that they just decided to come. Some people had been sober for 30 days, got their 30-day chip, and they were all super, super happy for them, which I didn't expect completely. I kind of thought that it was just going to be like oh, congrats, instead of a whole like celebration, clapping, everything like that. And then the virtual sorry, hiccups. The virtual meeting that I went to, they didn't allow us to mute ourselves or turn off our camera, which I thought was interesting because I'd never thought that that'd be a rule. But I guess it makes sense because they wanted us to be present. But and it was mainly older men. There were and only a few women actually. There were maybe a third of it women, and of those women, two of them were younger, and by younger I mean like early 30s. So the meeting agendas, the in-person one, it was the West Side Alcoholics Anonymous. This is where we went in person and we walked in the building and there were no windows, which I thought was really weird. We thought we were in the wrong place at first too, because it was in the middle of a very not nice rundown neighborhood. But they started with a serenity prayer and then they went and did an introduction around the whole circle, and some people said that they were addicts as well as addicted to alcohol. So they said that they were an alcoholic as well as an addict, so they were using other drugs as well, which I didn't really expect, but it makes sense now that I went through it. And then after introductions, they read the 12 steps and then an excerpt out of the big book. And then the group leader introduced herself, which the group leader of our meeting, ironically, was a former nurse. She lost her license because she got pulled into alcoholism, and started making all the wrong choices and got addicted to drugs as well. And so she lost her license, and she told us that. And I thought that that not was cool, but interesting, because you wouldn't think that that could happen to somebody who went through as much school and like already went through what we're going through right now. Um, but so that kind of hit a little closer to home than I think if we went to another AA meeting it would. But then they passed out chips, their milestone chips, and then they went around the circle to do updates and stories, and it ended in a prayer. Um, so that was the in person one, and it was very nice. The ladies went to lunch after. We did not attend with them, but they did go and they invited us at that one. And then the online meeting, it did not have a time for others to share. That's the main difference between the two. But there was also a guest speaker that day. So they had less time for others to share because of the guest speaker being there. Um, they made us keep our cameras and microphones on, and he told us his story about how he did not want to stop drinking, and then he started attending AA, and really he just got addicted to being the best AA member, and that was his addiction rather than alcoholism anymore. So that was a very interesting story, and a completely different take than our in-person one that we went to. And then so this one, we started with the serenity prayer, just like the other in person one. And then instead of doing introductions all around, they did an if you're new, raise your hand type thing. And then they read the 12 steps, just like the other one. And then they did part of chapter 3 in the big book of reading. And then their promises. They made promises saying, I promise I'll be better at this or that. One that stuck out to me was that they promised to get better for their kids. I thought that was very interesting and a good promise to make. And then the guest speaker, he told his story about getting addicted to being the best AA member and that that's not how it's supposed to be. Then they did the passing out chips. And then there was also an 18 months of sobriety, and everybody seemed very, very excited about that. And then they read A Vision for You in the Big Book on page 164 and ended with questions. So they were just a little bit different, but went over some of the same things. So it was interesting to see both sides of that, an in person and an online one. Okay. So now I'm going to go over stigma. There's a lot of stigma around mental health, and there's even worse stigma around substance abuse disorders. This stigma is present in social scenes, relationships, friendships, and family dynamics. So the perception of the public, the stigma that the public has about alcohol abuse disorder, they believe that 64% of people who struggle with substance use disorder are a danger to others, and 54% believe that they were to blame for their difficulties. I will be honest, I kind of thought the same before going to AA. I didn't think that I had this bias until I got there and I was like, man, I'm a little nervous about going in. And then I went in and I saw that these people are harmless. Like they just got caught up in the wrong things and it's very easy to do. And I know that addiction can be genetic. So that's a big stigma that the public has, and they don't have the knowledge that nursing students necessarily do. And I know that now after going to AA, none of them are really a danger, and I don't think any of them were to blame for the falling into alcoholism. Um, and then perception of healthcare staff. I thought that this was important to add in here because this is personal experience that I've seen whenever I'm in clinicals or just working because I work at the hospital. I've seen this happen in the healthcare setting, whether it be whispers at the nurse's station or just blatant disrespect during huddle. Um, so, healthcare staff tend to have ideas of what patients who have substance use disorders are. They typically think that they're aggressive, lazy, and non compliant, so this causes unfair treatment with these patients. Nurses tend to spend less time in rooms of people who are on CWAP precautions because they have withdrawal symptoms. And I think that that's just not okay because these patients deserve the same care, if not even better care, because they need our help and they're here and so we might as well offer them resources to try to make it better. So managing the stigma, there's a few ways that we can help manage the stigma in the society that we have. So changing the language that we use. So using words like, instead of saying they're addicts, saying a person with an addiction, so that they're a person first, because they aren't their addiction, they are a person. And then increasing awareness and education of the topic so that people aren't thinking that they're to blame for their difficulties. And then I also think that it's important to use encouragement to uplift these patients who are trying to get sober and trying to get better. Relationship development. So, rapport was a big thing that I was learning about while I was going to these meetings. I'll start with the group leaders because I thought that this was the biggest part of these meetings. Um, the nursing, the old nurse who fell into addiction in the in-person meeting, she caught my eye a lot and like caught my attention because of how honest and open she was to everybody in AA. So she built rapport with all of these members by telling her story and opening the floor to others while setting the tone of confidentiality and support rather than judgment. So she showed them that, hey, I went through this as well. You're not alone. And I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to open up the floor for you and for you to talk so that we can support you and get you through to see another day of sobriety. And so I think just her being open, honest, and like reaching out to them past just the meetings really built rapport with them and allowed them to feel more confident opening up to her. The group members also built rapport about between each other by telling their stories and encouraging others in the group to speak up and not judging their peers and hanging out after meetings. For example, the ladies went to lunch together. It's important that they have rapport with each other because if you can't trust people in the AA meeting, then nothing will get shared and it's more likely that you'll fall back into addiction. So, relationship development with nursing and these patients who are struggling with addiction. Um, so, our job is to support patients in a clinical setting while allowing independence and the least restrictive environment. We should be non-judgmental in providing resources such as community resources such as AA, social work to help bring social work in to maybe give them more resources that we don't know about. And then taking time to just sit and speak with them, hear their story, hear them out is the next point I have on there. So hear them out about what they're going through, and just taking that time to speak with them and see what they need from you. So those are some ways that we are able to build rapport with these patients so that we have a better chance of success. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was the effects of spirituality on the process of ending their addiction. So spirituality helps to sustain AA related involvements. That was from a research article that I found, and I thought that that was very interesting. The last step of the 12 steps is as a result of working through the 12 steps, one will have a spiritual awakening. And then prayer is also a very important thing for these members going through AA. I remember talking to a few ladies and I asked, how do you do it? How do you stay on this track? And their two main answers were coming back to AA every week and praying. So when they're going through a rough patch, they tend to turn to prayer for answers. And I think that that is a big thing for all of the members in AA who are successfully maintaining sobriety. And then it's also spirituality is a source of hope for many of the individuals who attend Alcoholics Anonymous. It gives them a sense of something higher than themselves to hold on to. A lot of these people are at rock bottom and they think that nothing can get better. And so just having something that they can hope for, it giving them a sense that there's something higher than themselves to hold on to. That's So, this hope that spirituality gives them helps them maintain sobriety, not only maintain it, but helps them get over that hump of sobriety. I know that whenever I was talking to people in these meetings, they told me that the worst part was the beginning because of the cravings, and it's hard to just to stop. And they said it's easier to stay sober, but getting sober is the hardest part. So they said that spirituality really helped them see how, like, who they could turn to give them hope and get them through the days that were rough. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. And I think that mental health should be a shared priority. And then here are my resources. Thank you.